Before anything changes in your life, before success or failure ever shows up in the real world, something happens quietly inside your head. That's where every battle is fought first. Not on the field, not in the office, not in front of an audience, but in the mind. Your mind is the battlefield, and whether you realize it or not, you are in a fight every single day. A fight between discipline and distraction, between belief and doubt, between courage and fear. And the truth most people avoid is this: the world doesn't defeat them, their own thoughts do. Think about how many times you've talked yourself out of trying. How many opportunities you lost because your mind whispered, what if you fail? How many nights you lay awake, replaying mistakes instead of planning your next move? That's not bad luck. That's not fate. That's a mind left unguarded. When you don't take control of your mind, it becomes the easiest place for fear to set up camp. Doubt moves in quietly, excuses feel comfortable, and before you know it, you're fighting a war you never trained for. The mind is powerful, but it's neutral. It doesn't care if it builds you or breaks you. It only follows what you feed it. Feed it fear, it will produce hesitation. Feed it negativity, and it will create limits where none exist. Feed it discipline, and it will sharpen your focus. Feed it belief, and it will push you forward even when everything hurts. That's why two people can face the same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. The difference isn't talent, luck, or background. It's what's happening in their mind in that moment. Most people think the battle is outside of them. They blame circumstances, people, the economy, the past, but the real fight is internal. It's the moment you feel tired but choose to keep going. It's the moment you feel afraid but take the step anyway. It's the moment when quitting sounds logical and discipline says, not today. That's the battlefield. And every time you choose, you're either gaining ground or losing it. Here's the hard truth if you don't consciously control your thoughts, someone else will. Social media will tell you what to want. Fear will tell you what you can't do. Comfort will tell you to wait. The past will tell you it's too late. And slowly, without realizing it, your mind becomes occupied territory. You're alive, but you're not in command. You're moving, but you're not progressing. You're busy, but you're not becoming. Winning the mental battle doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt. It means you don't let those feelings make your decisions. Strong minds feel the same emotions as weak ones. The difference is who's in charge. The weak mind listens to every negative thought as if it's a command. The strong mind hears it and says, I see you, but you don't decide. That's control. That's awareness. That's power. Your mind will test you when you're tired. It will test you when results are slow. It will test you when no one is watching. It will ask, is this worth it? Why keep pushing? Who do you think you are? And in those moments, the battlefield becomes real, because the answer you give, spoken or unspoken, shapes your future. Every habit you build, every goal you abandon, every standard you lower or raise begins with a thought you chose to follow. Understand this. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself. It's about protecting your mind from chaos. It's about setting rules for your thoughts so they don't run wild. Just like a city needs walls to stay safe, your mind needs structure to stay strong. Without it, anything can enter. Doubt, comparison, anxiety, regret. And once they're inside, they don't leave quietly. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your mental control. Motivation fades. Emotions change. But a trained mind stays steady. When life hits hard, and it will, your mind will either panic or perform. It will either search for excuses or solutions. That response is not accidental. It's built through daily choices. Small moments where you decide to focus instead of scroll, to think forward instead of backward, to act instead of overanalyze. The battlefield is loud. There are distractions everywhere, pulling at your attention, draining your energy, fragmenting your focus. Every notification, every opinion, every comparison is a soldier trying to invade your mental space. You can't fight all of them at once. That's why control matters. You choose what deserves your attention. You choose what thoughts get repeated. You choose what story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of becoming. And here's the most empowering part. No one can fight this battle for you, but no one can take it from you either. Your mind is the one place where you always have a choice. You might not control what happens to you, but you control how you interpret it. You control whether pain makes you bitter or better. You control whether setbacks become stopping points or stepping stones. Every great transformation starts here. Not with a perfect plan, not with perfect timing, but with a decision to take ownership of your thoughts, to stop letting fear write the script, to stop letting the past narrate your future, to step onto the battlefield with awareness and say, this is my mind and I decide what lives here. Because the moment you take control of your mind, the war begins to shift in your favor and everything else starts to follow. Everything you see in your life right now was once just a thought. Before it became a habit, before it became an action, before it became a result, it existed quietly in your mind. Thoughts are not harmless background noise. They are the blueprint. They shape how you see yourself, how you interpret the world, and how you move through it every single day. Whether you realize it or not, you are living inside the results of the thoughts you've been repeating for years. Most people underestimate this because thoughts feel invisible. You can't touch them, you can't measure them, and no one else can see them. But make no mistake, what you repeatedly think becomes what you repeatedly do. And what you repeatedly do becomes who you are. That's how thoughts turn into reality. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, silently, and relentlessly. If you tell yourself long enough that you're not good enough, your actions will start to match that belief. You'll hesitate, you'll play small, you'll avoid opportunities that require confidence. Not because you can't handle them, but because your mind already decided the outcome before you even tried. On the other hand, when you consistently think in terms of growth, possibility, and progress, your behavior shifts without force. You show up differently. You try again. You push a little further. Same circumstances, different results. Because the thinking changed. Your mind is constantly asking one question. What does this mean? When something goes wrong, your interpretation becomes the seed. One person thinks, this proves I'm a failure. Another thinks, this is feedback. Same event, different reality. The event didn't shape their future. The meaning they assigned to it did. That meaning came from a thought, and that thought shaped everything that followed. That's why guarding your thoughts is not optional. Every thought you allow to stay becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. You don't need to believe every thought that enters your mind. Many of them are borrowed from fear, from society, from past experiences, from people who didn't know your potential, but repetition turns even a lie into a belief. And once a belief forms, it runs your life in the background. Think about how often your mind defaults to the negative. One mistake outweighs 10 wins. One comment drowns out 100 compliments. That's not reality, that's conditioning. Your brain learned to scan for danger, not possibility, but what once protected you can now limit you if you don't retrain it. Awareness is the first step. When you catch a negative thought, you're not weak, you're awake. And when you replace it, you're not pretending, you're programming. Your future is built in these small, quiet moments. The thought you choose when no on E is watching. The self-talk you use when things get uncomfortable, the narrative you repeat when progress feels slow. Those moments stack. They create momentum. And momentum turns thought into action without resistance. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing thoughts that move you forward instead of trapping you in place. It means saying, this is hard, but I can handle hard. It means shifting from I can't to I'm learning. Those are not empty words. They are instructions to your nervous system. Your body responds to what your mind believes. Confidence changes posture. Fear changes breathing. Belief changes behavior. And here's the truth most people miss. You don't rise suddenly into success. You think your way there long before anyone sees it. Every disciplined action starts with a disciplined thought. Every courageous move begins with a moment of internal agreement. You don't wake up confident one day. You build confidence by thinking in alignment with effort and growth, even when evidence is small. Your thoughts also decide what you notice. When your mind is trained toward limitation, you see obstacles everywhere. When it's trained toward growth, you see opportunities hiding inside challenges. That's not luck, that's focus. And focus is shaped by thought. You can't act on what you don't see, and you won't see what your mind isn't trained to look for. The danger isn't having negative thoughts, it's letting them repeat unchecked. Repetition is what turns a thought into a belief and belief into identity. That's why one powerful thought repeated daily is stronger than 1,000 motivational words heard once. You bet own what you consistently tell yourself, especially in moments of doubt. This is where responsibility comes in. No one else hears your thoughts, but you live with their consequences. Blaming the world for results that were created internally keeps you stuck. Ownership sets you free. The moment you accept that your inner dialogue shapes your outer world, you gain leverage. You stop waiting for motivation and start creating direction. You don't need perfect thoughts. You need intentional ones. Thoughts that align with effort, discipline, and growth. Thoughts that pull you forward instead of dragging you back. Because reality doesn't respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you consistently think, believe, and act on. Change the thought, and you change the action. Change the action, and you change the habit. Change the habit, and you change the life. Most people don't lose control of their lives in big dramatic moments. They lose it in small emotional ones. A burst of anger, a wave of fear, a moment of frustration, an urge to escape discomfort. And in those moments, decisions are made that don't reflect who they truly want to be. That's why learning to stop letting emotions drive your decisions is one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop. Not because emotions are bad, but because they are temporary and consequences are not. Emotions are signals, not instructions. They tell you how you feel, not what you should do. But when the mind is untrained, feelings take the steering wheel. You say things you don't mean. You quit things you shouldn't. You delay things that matter. And later, when the emotion fades, you're left cleaning up the damage. Regret usually isn't about what you didn't know. It's about what you did while emotional. Think about how many times you felt motivated and promised yourself you'd change, only to quit when motivation disappeared. Or how often fear talked you out of an opportunity you knew deep down could have changed your life. That wasn't logic. That wasn't truth. That was emotion making decisions. It was never qualified to make. Strong people feel deeply, but they decide calmly. They don't deny emotions. They manage them. They pause instead of reacting. They create space between feeling and action. That space is everything. In that pause, you regain control. In that pause, discipline speaks. In that pause, you remember who you are and where you're going. Your brain is wired to seek comfort and avoid pain. When things get uncomfortable, emotions look for relief right now. That's why the mind reaches for distractions, excuses, and shortcuts. It's not weakness, it's biology. But awareness gives you power over it. When you recognize that an emotional urge is just your brain trying to protect you, you can choose not to obey it. Emotional decisions feel right in the moment. That's what makes them dangerous. Quitting feels like relief. Procrastination feels like rest. Anger feels like strength. But relief is not progress, and feeling powerful for a moment doesn't mean you're moving forward. Progress often feels boring, uncomfortable, and lonely. That's why it requires control. This is where discipline enters, not as punishment, but as protection. Discipline protects your future from your current mood. It reminds you that how you feel today should not decide what you become tomorrow. When you commit to acting based on values instead of feelings, your life stabilizes. You stop swinging between extremes. You become consistent. Consistency doesn't come from motivation. It comes from emotional regulation. It comes from being able to say, I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because you understand that feelings are unreliable narrators. They change with sleep, stress, hunger, and circumstances. If your goals depend on them, your progress will always be fragile. Learning to respond instead of react changes everything. Reaction is fast, automatic, and emotional. Response is deliberate, thoughtful, and controlled. Reaction asks, how do I feel right now? Response asks, what's the right move? That shift is small, but it separates leaders from followers, winners from wanderers. When pressure hits, emotions get louder. Fear exaggerates risk. Anger narrows vision. Excitement creates overconfidence. If you're not aware, those emotions hijack the mind and distort reality. That's why the calmest person in the room often has the most power. Not because they care less, but because they see more clearly. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. Suppression creates explosions later. Control means acknowledgement without obedience. You can feel angry and still speak respectfully. You can feel afraid and still move forward. You can feel tired and still show up. That's mastery. Every time you act against a destructive emotional impulse, you strengthen mental authority. You prove to yourself that you are not a slave to how you feel. And confidence grows from that proof. Not from hype, but from self-trust. You start believing in yourself because you've seen yourself stay steady under pressure. Most regrets come from emotional decisions made in moments of weakness. Most success comes from disciplined decisions made in moments of discomfort. That's not coincidence. That's control. And control is learned through repetition. Small daily moments where you choose patience over impulse, focus over distraction, commitment over comfort. The goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to become unshakable, to feel fully but decide wisely, to experience a storm without letting it steer the ship. When you master that, your actions align with your purpose instead of your moods. Because the moment you stop letting emotions drive your decisions is the moment you start driving your life. There is a voice in your head that speaks more than anyone else ever will. It comments on your actions, questions your ability, replays your mistakes, and predicts your future, often without your permission. That voice can be your greatest ally or your most dangerous enemy. And for most people, it has been left unchecked for far too long. Silencing the negative inner voice doesn't mean destroying it or pretending it doesn't exist. It means taking away its authority. Because just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves your belief. That voice learned its language over time. It picked up phrases from past failures, criticism, comparisons, and moments of embarrassment. Somewhere along the way, it started to sound like truth. You're not good enough. You always mess things up. People like you don't succeed. But those are not facts. They are habits of thought, and habits can be unlearned. Ed, the problem isn't that negative thoughts show up. It's that they speak without challenge. They show up confidently, often sounding logical, even protective. They say they're trying to keep you safe from disappointment or embarrassment. But what they actually do is keep you small. They stop action before it starts. They drain energy before effort begins. And over time, they become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time you listen to that voice and back away, it gets stronger. Every time you challenge it and move forward anyway, it weakens. This is not about positive thinking. It's about accurate thinking. It's about recognizing that the inner critic exaggerates danger and minimizes potential. It zooms in on what could go wrong and ignores everything that could go right. That voice thrives in silence and isolation. It gets loud when you're tired, alone, or under pressure. It shows up right before you try something new, right before you speak up, right before you commit. And it doesn't shout, it whispers. That's why it's so effective. It sounds like reason when it's really fear in disguise. Silencing it starts with awareness. You can't stop a voice you don't notice. The moment you catch yourself thinking in absolutes, always, never, everyone, no one, you found it. The moment your mind predicts failure before effort, it's there. The moment your past is used as evidence against your future, that's the voice talking. The next step is interruption, not argument, interruption. You don't debate fear, you redirect attention. You replace the thought with one that is grounded in effort and possibility. Not I will succeed, but I will try. Not this will be easy, but I can handle hard. Those statements don't lie to you. They empower you. Your inner dialogue shapes your nervous system. Harsh self-talk creates tension, anxiety, and hesitation. Supportive self-talk creates calm, clarity, and momentum. Athletes know this, leaders know this, performers know this. They train their inner voice to coach, not criticize, to correct without condemning, to push without destroying confidence. The negative inner voice often pretends to be you. That's the trick. But you are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. That distinction changes everything. The moment you realize you can observe a thought without obeying it, control shifts back into your hands. You become the decision maker again. Think about how you speak to people you care about. You don't define them by their worst moments. You don't tell them they're hopeless because they struggle. Yet many people speak to themselves with cruelty they would never accept from anyone else. That's not honesty, that's conditioning, and it can be changed. Replacing the negative voice doesn't mean never being critical. Growth requires honest feedback. But constructive feedback focuses on behavior, not identity. It says, that didn't work, adjust. The negative voice says, you don't work, quit. One builds skill, the other destroys momentum. Your inner voice also sets the ceiling on your effort. When it constantly questions your worth, your mind looks for exits. When it supports effort, your mind looks for solutions. That difference determines whether you persist or retreat when things get uncomfortable. Silencing the negative inner voice is a daily practice. It happens in small moments. When you wake up and choose intention over doubt. When you fail and choose learning over shame. When you feel fear and choose action over avoidance. Those choices stack. Over time, the voice loses volume, not because it disappears, but because it no longer runs the show. And here's the truth. Confidence isn't loud. It's calm. It's built when you prove to yourself that you can keep moving, even when your mind tries to stop you. Each time you do, you reclaim territory in the mental battlefield. Each time you do, you become harder to break. Because the moment you stop letting the negative inner voice define you is the moment you start becoming who you were meant to be. Right now, your life is moving in the direction of whatever holds your attention the most. Not what you say you care about, not what you wish you focused on, what you actually give your attention to day after day. Focus is not just a productivity tool, it is a force. And like any force, when it's undisciplined, it scatters your energy. When it's disciplined, it multiplies it. Your attention is being pulled in 100 directions every single day. Notifications, opinions, comparisons, noise, urgency that isn't really urgent. None of it feels dangerous on its own, but over time it fragments your mind. You start many things and finish very few. You feel busy but not fulfilled, tired but not proud. That's the cost of unfocused attention. Disciplining your focus means deciding ahead of time what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It means understanding that not everything that asks for your attention deserves a response. Most people live in reaction mode, responding to whatever is loudest, newest, or easiest. But reaction drains power. Direction builds it. When your focus is scattered, your mind stays shallow. You skim life instead of engaging with it. You never go deep enough to build skill, confidence, or mastery. That's why focus is uncomfortable. It demands presence. It asks you to sit with difficulty instead of escaping it. It asks you to stay when your mind wants to wander. Every meaningful result in your life requires sustained attention, not motivation, not talent, attention, relationships, health, growth, discipline. None of them improve accidentally. They improve when you consistently direct your focus toward what matters and away from what doesn't. And that requires training. Your mind will resist focus at first. It's used to novelty. It's addicted to stimulation. When you remove distractions, restlessness appears. That's normal. That discomfort is not a signal to stop. It's a sign you're reclaiming control. The ability to focus is built the same way strength is built, through resistance. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. When your focus is on problems, energy turns into stress. When your focus is on progress, energy turns into momentum. The mind cannot deeply focus on two things at once. Multitasking is a myth. What you're really doing is switching attention rapidly, and each switch drains energy. Discipline your focus and clarity follows. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates action, and action, repeated, creates results. This is why successful people protect their attention fiercely. They schedule focus. They remove distractions. They say no more than they say yes. Not because they are rigid, but because they understand the cost of mental leakage. Focus is also emotional. When you dwell on past mistakes, you relive them. When you obsess over future fears, you suffer them early. Focus pulls emotions with it. That's why redirecting attention is one of the fastest ways to regain emotional control. You may not control the first thought, but you control the second one. You control where your mind stays. Disciplining focus doesn't mean eliminating rest or enjoyment. It means being intentional. When you work, you work. When you rest, you rest. Most people do neither fully. They half work while distracted and half rest while anxious. Focus brings peace because it aligns your mind with your moment. Every distraction is a choice, not always a conscious one, but a choice nonetheless. Each time you choose focus, you strengthen your ability to choose again. Each time you give in to distraction, the habit deepens. That's why small moments matter. 5 minutes of focused effort done daily beats hours of scattered effort done occasionally. Your identity is shaped by what you consistently pay attention to. If you focus on growth, you become a grower. If you focus on comfort, you become a comfort seeker. If you focus on excuses, you become an excuse maker. Focus decides direction long before results appear. This is why mental control and focus are inseparable. A distracted mind is easy to control from the outside. A focused mind is hard to manipulate. When you choose what to think about, you choose what to become. Because the moment you discipline your focus is the moment your life starts moving forward on purpose. Life is calm when things are easy. Anyone can think clearly when everything is going their way. The real test of mental control shows up when life gets heavy, when pressure builds, when plans fall apart, when the weight of expectation sits on your chest. That's when your mind reveals whether it has been trained or left to panic. Controlling your mind when life gets hard isn't about pretending you're strong. It's about staying steady when everything inside you wants to collapse. Hard moments trigger survival mode. Your thoughts race. Your breathing shortens. Fear magnifies every risk, and doubt questions every decision you've ever made. In those moments, your mind tries to escape discomfort as fast as possible. It looks for exits, quitting, blaming, numbing, avoiding. And if you've never trained for pressure, those exits feel like relief. But relief is temporary. The consequences last. Pressure exposes patterns. When life hits hard, you don't rise to your hopes, you fall to your training. If your mind is used to comfort, it will look for comfort. If it's used to discipline, it will look for solutions. That difference determines whether hardship shapes you or breaks you. Pain has a way of narrowing perspective. One setback starts to feel like the whole story. One failure feels permanent. One loss feels defining. That's the mind under pressure telling a story it cannot see clearly. Control doesn't mean denying pain. It means not letting pain distort reality. It means reminding yourself that this moment is part of the journey, not the end of it. When things get hard, your self-talk becomes louder and more intense. The inner voice that whispers during calm moments starts shouting. It questions your worth, your ability, your direction. If you don't intervene, those thoughts snowball. Oh, negative thought becomes 10. 10 become paralysis. That's why control matters most when it feels hardest to maintain. Strong minds slow down under pressure. They simplify. They focus on the next right action, not the entire mountain. Weak minds spiral. They try to solve everything at once and end up frozen. The difference isn't intelligence, it's discipline. It's the ability to breathe, observe, and choose instead of react. Hard times demand emotional regulation. Fear will try to rush you. Anger will try to blind you. Despair will try to convince you there's no point in continuing. Those emotions feel urgent, but they are not wise. Control means letting the emotion pass through without letting it take over. You acknowledge it, then you act based on principle, not panic. Growth often feels like suffering in the moment. Discipline feels heavy. Progress feels slow. And in those moments, your mind will ask if it's worth it. That question shows up right before breakthroughs and right before quitting. The answer you give determines which one you get. Hardship also has a way of stripping away distractions. When things get difficult, excuses become less convincing. You're forced to face yourself. That's uncomfortable, but it's powerful. Because clarity often comes from pressure. Control allows you to use hardship as fuel instead of letting it consume you. Resilient minds don't rely on hope alone. They rely on habits. When everything feels uncertain, habits create stability, showing up even imperfectly, sticking to routines even when motivation disappears. Those small acts of consistency send a powerful message to your mind: I am still in control. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they lose mental composure. They let a hard season convince them that the effort is pointless. But seasons change, circumstances shift. The only thing that must remain steady is your commitment to controlling your response. Hard moments are not punishments, they are invitations to level up. They ask you to become stronger, calmer, more disciplined than you were before. Avoiding that invitation keeps you stuck at the same level. Accepting it forces growth. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you build confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you can handle discomfort without falling apart. That confidence can't be faked. It's earned through experience. Life will keep testing you. Not because it's cruel, but because growth requires resistance. Control is what turns resistance into strength. Without it, pressure crushes. With it, pressure sharpens. Because when you learn to control your mind in hard times, nothing in life can truly break you. Most people hope their mind will be strong when they need it most. They assume confidence will appear. When the moment demands it, that discipline will suddenly rise when pressure hits. But the mind doesn't work that way. It responds to training, not wishes. Just like the body, your mind grows stronger only when you work it, consistently, intentionally, and with effort. If you don't train it, it weakens. If you do, it becomes one of the most powerful tools you'll ever possess. Mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's built through repetition, through showing up when it's inconvenient, through choosing effort over ease, through doing small, hard things daily, until difficulty stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling familiar. Every time you resist an impulse, every time you focus when your mind wants to wander, every time you keep going when quitting feels justified, you're adding a rep to your mental workout. Training the mind doesn't mean overwhelming yourself. Muscles don't grow from lifting the heaviest weight once. They grow from lifting manageable weight repeatedly. The same applies to discipline. Start where you are. Focus for 5 minutes. Keep a promise to yourself for one day. Say no to one distraction. Those small wins build trust, and trust builds confidence. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes normal. Your mind adapts to whatever you repeatedly ask of it. If you constantly escape discomfort, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. If you stay with discomfort and act anyway, your capacity expands. That's why growth feels uncomfortable. It's literally your mind adapting to a new standard. And just like sore muscles after a workout, mental discomfort is a sign of progress, not failure. Consistency is the secret. Motivation comes and goes, but consistency rewires the brain. When you repeat disciplined actions, your mind stops questioning them. They become automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself about showing up. You just do. That's when control becomes effortless. Not because it's easy, but because it's familiar. Training your mind also means exposing it to challenge. Avoiding challenge keeps it fragile. Seeking challenge builds resilience. That doesn't mean reckless risk. It means intentional discomfort. Difficult conversations, focus work, honest self-reflection. Fit, save moments, stretch the mind. And stretched minds don't snap under pressure. They hold. Failure is part of training, just like missed reps or bad workouts. Mental lapses happen. What matters is response. Do you quit training because you slipped, or do you return the next day? Progress is built by those returns. Each time you come back after falling off, your mental muscle gets stronger. Your environment plays a role in training too. Just like a gym supports physical training, your mental environment supports mental growth. The content you consume, the people you listen to, the routines you keep, they either strengthen or weaken your mind. You don't need perfection, but you do need awareness. Protect what you feed your mind. Training also requires patience. You won't notice results immediately. That's where most people stop. They don't feel stronger fast enough, so they assume nothing is happening. But strength is being built beneath the surface. One day you'll face a situation that would have broken you before, and you'll handle it calmly. That's when you realize the training worked. Mental strength shows up quietly. It's the ability to stay focused when things get boring, to stay disciplined when no one is watching, to stay grounded when emotions rise. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. The more you train your mind, the less control fear has over you. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. It becomes a signal, not a stop sign. And with each repetition, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you once believed. Because a trained mind doesn't wait for strength, it creates it. The past is a tricky thing. It has a way of sneaking G into your thoughts, coloring your perceptions, and influencing your decisions without permission. Every mistake you've made, every missed opportunity, every word you wish you hadn't said can replay in your mind like a broken record. And most people allow it to dictate the present, to shape the future, and to define who they are. But the truth is this: the past is not a prison. It is a lesson, and its only power is the power you give it. Learning to detach from past failures is one of the most liberating steps toward mental control. People carry their failures as baggage, dragging them into new situations where they no longer belong. One failure in a project becomes a belief that you'll never succeed in your career. One failed relationship becomes a rule that you're destined to be alone. One rejection becomes a narrative that you are unworthy. But these stories are not facts. They're interpretations, and interpretations can be changed. The past only defines you if you allow it to. Otherwise, it is merely a teacher with experience to offer, not a jailer with a sentence to enforce. The difficulty is that failure leaves an emotional imprint. Mistakes often bring shame, regret, or embarrassment, which makes them feel permanent. You remember the moment, the people, the words, and the way it felt like a scar on your character. But what we fail to realize is that our emotional memory exaggerates the failure, makes it feel bigger than it was, and convinces us it is still relevant. Every time you replay a failure, you're practicing being defeated. Every time you relive it without perspective, it becomes more powerful than it deserves to be. Detaching from past failures doesn't mean forgetting them. It means reframing them. It means recognizing that what happened then does not determine what happens now. Every failure is data, not destiny. Every mistake is feedback, not a verdict. When you begin to see it this way, your mind stops punishing you for decisions made in a different time, under different circumstances, with less knowledge than you have now. You begin to use the past as a map, not a trap. One of the hardest things to accept is that failure is inevitable. Every person you admire, every success story you hear is filled with moments of failure that they chose not to dwell on. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is not that they never failed. It is that they refused to live in the failure. They processed it, they learned from it, and then they let it go. Detachment doesn't erase the lesson. It removes the emotional burden. Letting go of the past also requires a shift in focus. When your mind clings to what went wrong, it cannot see what is possible. Dwelling on past mistakes creates tunnel vision. You only see limitations, only see risk, only see why you might fail again. But when you detach, your mind opens to opportunity. You start to see solutions instead of problems, actions instead of excuses, and progress instead of regret. The past becomes a reference point, not a filter that distorts reality. Another key part of detachment is self-compassion. People often attach shame to failure as if they are inherently flawed. But mistakes are part of being human. They are proof that you tried, that you acted, that you lived. Being kind to yourself allows your mind to release the past without denial. You acknowledge, DG, learn and move forward. Shame change you. Compassion frees you. It also means taking responsibility without attachment. Responsibility is powerful, but regret is destructive. Responsibility says, I made a choice, I will learn and do better. Regret says, I am defined by my mistakes. Detaching means embracing responsibility, learning the lesson, and then letting the outcome of the past stay in the past. You cannot rewrite history, but you can shape the present and the future with the knowledge it gave you. Patterns are another reason the past can hold sway. If you fail once and your mind labels you as a failure, you begin to act as though that identity is fixed. You avoid challenges, you doubt yourself, and you hesitate. Detachment disrupts this pattern. It says, the past is data, not definition. The failure is one point on a map, not the territory of my life. This mental shift changes behavior, decisions, and ultimately results. Detaching from past failures also strengthens resilience. When life inevitably brings new challenges, you are less likely to crumble under pressure. You've already practiced releasing outcomes you cannot change. You've trained your mind to focus on the present action instead of the past narrative. That ability creates a calm, focused, and strategic mind capable of handling adversity without being weighed down by it. Forgiveness is part of the process, not necessarily for others, but for yourself. Holding on to guilt or blame keeps keeps you anchored in the past. Letting go is not about condoning mistakes. It's about reclaiming your energy, attention, and mental space for what matters now. Every minute spent reliving a failure is a minute saint. Olin from Growth, Action, and Opportunity. The more you practice detachment, the lighter your mind becomes. You stop overthinking decisions based on fear of repeating mistakes. You stop hesitating because you're haunted by what went wrong. You start approaching life with curiosity instead of caution, courage instead of regret. And that freedom transforms everything, from relationships to career, from habits to mindset. Detachment doesn't happen overnight. It is a discipline, a muscle, a daily practice. It requires awareness of your thoughts, acknowledgement of your feelings, and intentional choice to release what no longer serves you. Each time you catch yourself replaying a mistake and consciously shift your focus, you are training your mind to prioritize the present over the past. That repetition builds strength. That strength builds freedom. Because the moment you release the past is the moment you reclaim your power. Most people want to be comfortable. They chase safety, familiarity, and ease because it feels good in the moment. Comfort is seductive. It whispers, stay here, it's safe, you don't need more. But comfort is also dangerous because it quiets growth. It lulls the mind into stagnation, convinces the heart that enough is enough, and tricks you into believing that avoiding challenge is the path to happiness. Choosing growth over comfort is one of the most important decisions you will ever make, because growth requires discomfort, and discomfort is where transformation happens. Growth doesn't happen in the easy moments. It happens when the mind is tested, stretched, and pushed beyond what it thinks it can handle. Every skill you've ever mastered, every achievement you've earned, every breakthrough you've experienced came from pushing past comfort. Sitting in ease might feel safe, but it never produces excellence. Comfort is passive, growth is active. And the active path is always harder, but it's also always more rewarding. The challenge with comfort is that it disguises itself as happiness. A cozy routine, minimal effort, and predictable outcomes feel pleasant, but they create a trap. You wake up one day and realize you've grown smaller instead of stronger. The life you dreamed of feels distant, and yet in your comfort, you've convinced yourself that it wasn't meant for you. Growth asks hard questions. Are you willing to risk embarrassment? Are you willing to endure failure? Are you willing to feel uncomfortable for something greater? Comfort says no, growth says yes. Every decision between comfort and growth is a test of your mind. It's the moment when you choose to stay or step forward. Growth is inconvenient. It demands focus when distractions scream. It demands effort when laziness feels easier. It demands persistence when quitting would be simpler. Comfort, on the other hand, is effortless. It requires nothing. But effortless never leads to exceptional. Effortless leads to mediocrity, regret, and wondering what might have been. To choose growth over comfort, you must first understand the cost of comfort. Every time you choose the easy path, you pay a price. It might not be obvious immediately, but it accumulates. Lost opportunities, untapped potential, skills never developed, habits never strengthened, confidence never built. Comfort always comes at the expense of your future self, even if it feels good to your present self. Growth requires embracing discomfort as a teacher rather than an enemy. Fear, struggle, and challenge are not signs that you're failing. They are indicators that you are moving forward. Your mind naturally resists discomfort because it's designed to protect you, but that protection only works if danger is real. Discomfort in pursuit of growth is not danger, it's fuel. It strengthens you, trains you, and shapes you into someone capable of more. Habits are the battlefield where comfort and growth collide. The comfort habit is easy to maintain. It requires minimal effort, rewards the mind immediately, and reinforces safety. The growth habit is demanding. It asks for discipline, repetition, and delayed gratification. The difference between people who succeed and people who remain average is often how consistently they choose the growth habit over the comfort habit. That choice isn't glamorous. It's daily, repeated, and quiet. But over time, it accumulates into massive transformation. Growth also requires emotional courage. Comfort is emotional safety. It allows you to avoid feelings of fear, failure, and uncertainty. Growth asks you to feel those things and act anyway. Every uncomfortable conversation, every risk taken, every step into the unknown strengthens emotional resilience. Emotional courage is not built in ease, it's forged in discomfort. And the more often you face it, the stronger you become. The mind will always resist growth because it prefers predictable outcomes. The body will resist effort because it prefers rest. The heart will resist risk because it prefers safety. That resistance is normal. That resistance is expected. The difference between someone who grows and someone who doesn't is simple. The person who grows acts anyway. They act while afraid, tired, uncertain, and unmotivated. They act while uncomfortable. And that action becomes habit, habit becomes character, and character becomes destiny. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you expand what is possible for yourself. You see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities. You begin to embrace failure as feedback instead of fear. You start taking responsibility for your life instead of waiting for circumstances to improve. That mindset shift happens incrementally, but it compounds into unstoppable momentum over time. Comfort also creates limits in thinking. When the mind stays in ease, it stops imagining, it stops innovating, it stops reaching. Growth requires stretching your imagination, your skills, and your resilience. It requires believing in potential before it manifests. Choosing comfort over growth is essentially shrinking your vision for what you can accomplish. Growth expands it. Every discomfort you embrace expands what you now believe is possible for yourself. There's a reason. The most successful, influential, and fulfilled people often appear fearless. They are not without fear. They are accustomed to discomfort. They have trained their minds to step into it, endure it, and act in spite of it. They have chosen growth over comfort so many times that discomfort no longer dictates their decisions. And that's the principle anyone can apply. The more you deliberately choose growth, the less your mind will fear the hard path, and the more natural it becomes to move toward progress instead of ease. The path of growth is not smooth, but it is purposeful. Comfort is smooth, but it leads nowhere. Choosing growth over comfort doesn't mean rejecting rest, joy, or balance. It means refusing to let ease alone define your actions. It means prioritizing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. It means deciding today that the version of yourself you want to become is worth the temporary discomfort required to reach it. Because the moment you consistently choose growth over comfort is the moment your life stops being about ease and starts being about potential. Your mind is constantly talking to you. Every day, in every moment, there is an ongoing conversation happening inside your head. Some of it is conscious, some of it is automatic, and some of it is so subtle you barely notice it. This conversation is called self-talk, and it is one of the most powerful forces shaping your life. Self-talk is the voice that decides whether you see possibility or limitation, courage or fear, opportunity or threat. Learning to master self-talk is not optional. It is essential because the way you speak to yourself determines the way you show up in the world. Most Opal underestimate this power because self-talk feels intangible. You can't measure it, you can't see it, and it doesn't announce itself. Yet it dictates every decision, every habit, every action, and every reaction. When the voice inside tells you you can't, your body follows, your posture changes, your confidence falters, your energy diminishes. The mind listens to itself more than it listens to anyone else. If your self-talk is negative, it becomes a filter that distorts reality, convincing you that obstacles are larger than they are and that challenges are insurmountable. Negative self-talk is sneaky. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It points out flaws you didn't even know you noticed. It reminds you of past failures, of missed opportunities, of times you were rejected or humiliated. That whisper grows louder over time if left unchecked. Every time you listen to it, it gains authority. Every time you act based on it, it becomes a habit. Soon, you are no longer responding to reality. You are responding to a distorted narrative in your head. Mastering self-talk starts with awareness. You have to notice what you are saying to yourself. Most people go through life on autopilot, repeating phrases learned from parents, teachers, society, or past experiences. You don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind, but you do have to acknowledge that every repeated thought shapes your identity. Awareness is the first step in taking control. You cannot change what you cannot see. The next step is intervention. Once you hear the negative or limiting voice, you have to actively replace it with constructive self-talk. That doesn't mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It means speaking truth with clarity and intention. If you fail at something, instead of saying, "I'm useless," you say, "I made a mistake and I can learn from it." If you feel inadequate, instead of "I'm not good enough," you say, "I have the ability to improve and I will work on it." These statements are not empty affirmations. They are instructions to your mind. Your nervous system reacts to them. Your focus shifts. Your behavior changes. Mastering self-talk also requires consistency. One positive statement heard once will not undo years of negative dialogue. The mind needs repetition. Every time you consciously replace a destructive thought with a constructive one, you are reinforcing new neural pathways. Over time, these pathways become stronger than the old ones, and your default voice shifts from criticism to guidance. Your inner dialogue becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Self-talk shapes identity. If you repeatedly tell yourself, "I can't," your mind internalizes it. Your actions align with that identity. You stop trying new things, avoid challenges, and shrink your vision of what is possible. On the other hand, if your self-talk consistently affirms possibility, resilience, and effort, your mind adapts. You start to see opportunity where others see obstacles. You approach failure as feedback instead of as a verdict. You move forward in life with clarity and confidence. The mastery of self-talk also affects emotional control. When negative emotions arise, your voice can either feed them or calm them. Anger, fear, anxiety, and doubt are inevitable, but how you narrate them internally determines your response. If fear says, "I can't do this," the mind reacts with hesitation or avoidance. If you respond internally with, "I will take this step," even if it's uncomfortable, you activate courage and resourcefulness. The dialogue inside your head is the mechanism through which emotions are translated into action or inaction. Self-talk is not just about avoiding negativity. It's about reinforcing your potential. Every time you face a challenge and internally say, "I can handle this," you are strengthening your ability to handle challenges in the future. Every time you internally say, "I will learn from this," you are teaching your mind resilience. The words you use internally are not mere commentary, they are seeds, and seeds grow over time into the reality you experience. Mastering self-talk also requires honesty. Constructive self-talk does not sugarcoat reality. It acknowledges difficulty, limitation, or error, while simultaneously directing focus toward growth and solution. "This is hard, but I will persist. I made a mistake, but I can correct it. I feel fear, but I will act anyway." This kind of dialogue balances acknowledgement with empowerment. It trains your mind to respond rather than react, to act rather than avoid, and to persevere rather than quit. Self-talk also influences long-term habits and decisions. The person you become is the accumulation of daily internal dialogue. If your mind constantly encourages avoidance, procrastination, or self-doubt, your behaviors reflect that. If your mind consistently reinforces discipline, courage, and curiosity, your behaviors align with growth and success. Mastery of self-talk is a foundation of a life lived intentionally. Another critical aspect is vigilance. The mind will attempt to revert to old patterns when you are tired, stressed, or distracted. Negative self-talk thrives in those moments because it relies on default behavior. That's why conscious practice is essential. Every day, in every interaction, in every decision, you have to monitor the conversation inside. You cannot outsource your mental leadership to chance or habit. You must actively command it. Finally, self-talk shapes vision. The way you narrate your life internally determines what you see as possible. If your voice says, "I'm limited," your mind cannot envision opportunity. If your voice says, "I am capable," your mind begins to notice solutions and pathways that were invisible before. The inner dialogue is the lens through which reality is interpreted. And mastering it means you choose clarity over distortion, possibility over limitation, and action over fear. Because the moment you master your self-talk is the moment your mind becomes your greatest ally. Your habits define your life far more than your goals, your intentions, or even your motivation. Every day, your behaviors add up, some small, some significant, and together they determine the trajectory of your future. Habits are the operating system of your mind. They run quietly in the background, often without conscious thought, and they dictate how you respond to challenges, how you manage discomfort, and how you pursue progress. Taking control of your mind means taking control of your habits, because without that control, the mind drifts, and the drift determines your destiny. Most people underestimate the power of habits because they focus on big results rather than small actions. They think success is a single monumental event, a lucky break, or a sudden burst of willpower. But real change is rarely dramatic. It is incremental, built one repetition at a time. Every habit, no matter how small, compounds over time. Drinking 1 glass of water daily builds hydration. Reading 5 pages a day builds knowledge. Making your bed each morning builds discipline. These micro decisions accumulate into identity, shaping the person you are becoming. The danger is that habits are automatic. They are performed without awareness, often in response to triggers, and that makes them both powerful and dangerous. If your habits are unintentional or negative, they quietly sabotage your life, scrolling endlessly on your phone, procrastinating on important work, reacting impulsively to stress. These are habits just as much as exercising, planning your day, or practicing gratitude. One builds momentum, the other builds limitation. Control over habits begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Most people operate on autopilot, repeating patterns learned in childhood, mimicked from peers, or developed in reaction to fear or comfort. Awareness means noticing not just what you do, but why you do it. Why do you reach for your phone when stressed? Why do you skip exercise when tired? Why do you speak to yourself harshly when challenged? Every behavior has a trigger and a pattern. Identifying that pattern is the first step toward mastery. Once awareness is established, intention becomes the guiding principle. Intentional habits are chosen deliberately rather than defaulted into unconsciously. You decide what you will do and under what conditions. You decide which behaviors align with the life you want to create. That's why habit formation is more than action. It's an act of mental leadership. You are telling your mind, this is the path. This is how we operate. Consistency is the secret to habit mastery. Habits are not built by occasional effort. They are built by repeated, deliberate practice. Doing something once is a decision. Doing it repeatedly is an identity statement. The mind learns through repetition. Every time you perform a positive habit, you reinforce the belief, I am disciplined, capable, and committed. Every time you allow a destructive habit, you reinforce the opposite. Momentum is formed not through perfection, but through persistence. Habits also shape emotional resilience. When stress arises, your default behaviors determine whether you crumble or thrive. A person who habitually reacts with calm, thoughtfulness, and problem solving will naturally handle pressure better than someone whose habits are reactive, avoidance-based, or impulsive. Habits create muscle memory not only in the body, but in the mind. They prepare you for the inevitable challenges of life. Small habits are deceptively powerful because they compound. One disciplined morning builds the energy for another. One focused hour at work builds confidence for the next. One act of self-control strengthens your ability to resist temptation later. Habits are like interest in a bank account. Small deposits accumulate, and over time, the balance grows exponentially. That is why mastering habits is not about radical change. It is about steady, consistent improvement. Breaking negative habits requires understanding the triggers and the rewards that maintain them. Habits are rarely about the action itself. They are about the payoff. Binge watching, procrastination, overeating, complaining, they satisfy a need, whether for distraction, comfort, or avoidance. The key to change is not just stopping the habit, but replacing it with a behavior that satisfies the same need while supporting growth. For example, stress triggers scrolling, replace it with deep breathing or a short walk. Fatigue triggers avoidance, replace it with a 5-minute focused effort session. Change the loop, and you change the outcome. Creating positive habits also requires environment design. The mind responds to cues. Remove distractions and make growth easier to perform. Place your running shoes by the door. Put water on your desk. Set reminders for meditation. Arrange your space so that the habits you want are convenient and the ones you don't want are inconvenient. Your environment is a silent partner in hobby T formation. It either supports you or undermines you. Accountability accelerates habit mastery. Humans are social creatures, and the mind responds to expectations. Sharing your goals, tracking your habits, or partnering with someone on a similar path reinforces consistency. Habits are not just individual, they are relational. Accountability creates an external structure that strengthens internal discipline. Over time, habits define identity. The person you become is not the sum of your intentions, it is the sum of your repeated actions. You are not just what you do once, you are what you do daily. If you repeatedly act with discipline, focus, and courage, those qualities become part of who you are. If you repeatedly act with avoidance, distraction, or self-doubt, those qualities also define you. Habits are the lens through which identity is created and reinforced. The final aspect of habit mastery is patience. Habits are built gradually, and results may be invisible at first, but the mind is learning with every repetition. Consistency compounds beneath the surface before it becomes visible in outcomes. Trust in the process, honor the repetitions, and recognize that small, intentional steps create enormous impact over time. In the end, taking control of your mind is not a single decision. It is a lifelong practice. It is the conscious choice to master your thoughts, direct your focus, manage your emotions, and shape your habits, even when life is challenging. Every moment you choose awareness over autopilot, growth over comfort, action over fear, and discipline over impulse, you are reclaiming your power. Your mind is the steering wheel of your life. And when you take full control, you stop drifting and start moving with purpose, clarity, and strength. The journey is not always easy, but it is always worth it, because the life you create begins with the mind you command.